Hi, Zestie. We left off from the last episode where we were able to save my mom's life through the surgery last January. But that was just the beginning of the battle. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. I'm Glee, your host. In this show, we share zesty stories to cultivate the happiness and hero within. As you know, aside from being a physically taxing disease, cancer drains you out both mentally and financially. For the 2 months after her surgery, we were focused on making my mom feel as comfortable as we possibly can. We hired a caregiver who could look after her for 12 hours each day unless she calls in sick or just doesn't feel like working. And mind you, it is not cheap. That's why most of the time the average people don't hire one. And as much as possible, they'll just take care of their loved ones themselves because it's very expensive. But the problem is, I'm not there. So the colostomy bag attached to her was making her uncomfortable and she was still adjusting to it. By the way, trigger warning, I might talk something about bodily waste, so consider yourself warned. Do you know what I realized more during this ordeal? Our body is extremely fascinating, as though the entire function is just a plain miracle in our very own eyes and we don't even appreciate it enough. When enough stool moves to the rectum, the amount of stool causes the tissues in the rectum to stretch or distend. Inside these tissues are special stretch receptors designed to signal the brain when they are stretched. So, what does that mean? This means that we only go to the toilet when it's full down there. And what does this mean for my mom who has the colostomy bag attached to the soma? That means that every time she digests food, it goes directly to the bag. And what does this mean for the carers? That you need to clean the bag 4 to 5 times a day. Yes, my friends. When I visited her in mid-March, I experienced it. You would need to be careful in cleaning the bag out because first of all, if it leaks outside the bag, you'll have to deal with what's spilled outside the bag, if you know what I mean. This isn't just a solid matter, unlike what Amber Heard has left on Johnny Depp's side of the bed. By the way, if you Zesties are not following the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, you are missing out. Missing out in all that drama. Think Suits and How to Get Away with Murder in a reality show. Anyway, it's out of topic here, but that's just a side comment. And if any of you who are following this trial, hit me up and I'd be up for a discussion about this. So, without delving into much more of the ickier details, it was quite a challenge to take care of someone you love, especially in that state. You can see and feel the degradation of the human body. My mom was that type of person who is bubbly, full of energy, to a point loud, cheerful, and controlling most of the time in a motherly way. And all of these traits drastically disappeared as her body fought this disease. She became fatigued, low-spirited, and lost control of her bodily functions. Her body was slowly rejecting solid food at first. She can only eat a very small amount of solids and had to drink loads of milk supplements to sustain her. It's extremely devastating to see, just no words to describe it. She was able to start oral chemo and her body responded quite well. But we had to stop it with the second round because she's turning very yellow and the symptom of jaundice. It's a condition in which the skin, whites of the eyes, and mucous membranes turn yellow because of the high level of bilirubin, a yellow-orange bile pigment. This meant that the tumor has gone too big in the liver and the liver couldn't do its job anymore of cleansing the body. There were other ways to prolong her life, but it entailed another operation to insert a tube in the liver. This isn't even a guarantee. She was considerate enough of the expenses and preferred to hold on and prepare for what was to come. Retelling this is immensely painful, or even writing the script is immensely painful, actually. So I'll just stop here. I do miss her loads. On the day of this recording, 2 nights earlier, I dreamt of her. It was as if she didn't go and she's just there or somewhere. It's as if she was fine and has always been. And if I remember correctly, my dream was she was happy and she asked me to play badminton. I used to play badminton before, and every Saturday, every weekend when I was still in the Philippines. And for some reason, I remember the badminton court. There were two courts that I used to play at. And then she said, like, we play at this court, something like that. And then that kind of reminds me that it has been like around 40 days since her passing. I could say that I'm the one closest to her. It's because she can be too clingy and I just leave her be and understand that that's her personality. So we chatted and called every day. I admit it can be annoying and it has been annoying at times because, like, imagine like I'm in the middle of a meeting, in an in-person or on-call meeting, and she calls me because just because I didn't reply to her good morning chat or good afternoon chat, those types of things. There were a lot of things, but that's just one of the things actually that I miss about my mom. Those annoying little things. And although it could be inconvenient, I still chose to call her every day, even just for 5 minutes whenever I can. And that made the difference all this while. I don't have many regrets about her passing, but I do miss her quite a lot. And there are days that I'm fine in the morning and I cry in the middle of the night, and sometimes I can't sleep. It's really funny how things turn out, how the annoying things you used to think about a person are one of the things that you miss about them. You miss about those calls that interrupt your meeting for some reason, the scolding, and just a lot of those bubbly stuff that she used to do before. So I do miss that quite a lot. So, my point is in this episode, what are the things that I learned or relearned about this whole situation? So, in no chronological order, so these were the things, okay? The first thing was it's just about doing your best. I realized much more during that situation because if you do your best in any type of situation, you wouldn't regret anything. So with any disease, it will certainly break the bank, right? So in our family situation, my mom didn't have private insurance, so health expenditures are discounted only through the public healthcare system, which isn't much in the Philippines. So what I did was I went out there shameless and asked people for donations if they have spare change. I couldn't get more loans because I had one when I was financing my dad's health such a situation the year prior, and I might be swimming in debt if I had to this time. So in the end, we did what we could. We did whatever was possible within our mortal power. And the resources are limited, and I am not God. So she didn't make it. Reliving this is still painful to me, and seeing her photos ache my heart. But anyway, moving on. I'm still trying to make this as upbeat as I can, Zesties. Please bear with me. And second thing that I learned is the value of life itself. It was really an alarm bell for me. I value the life of my parents and the people that I love. But what I realized was that I didn't value my life as much. I was putting others first. I was putting my work next to it. And I had to refrain from that because life is so freaking short. I had to remind myself that my life is so much more than this, that my life is short and I have to prioritize what will be the best for me. I had to get out there. I had to try new things. I had to do new things, go back to the old ones, the ones that I used to love. So, speaking of which, I had been recently reading and listening to books, which is great. There haven't been good shows that I am really hooked on, so I resorted to reading and listening to books, and it has worked wonders for me. I had a couple more that I started reading before, but I didn't get to finish them yet. But what I wanted to share here on the show soon are about the books that I've read entitled Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The Eleanor Oliphant book really warmed my heart in many ways in these cold nights after losing my mom. And the funny thing is, I remember the feeling that whilst I was reading it and after reading it, that cozy, warm feeling. That's why I have scoured the internet for any book similar to Eleanor Oliphant book. If you Zesties have some recommendations, please do let me know. The third thing I learned about this situation is the value of my time. Sometimes we tend to forget that time is not an infinite resource, that we can have more of it, but the next thing we know, we are out of time. So I learned to, as much as possible, spend my times wisely. Sometimes I do forget it, but this was a big reminder for me this time around. It's sometimes not as successful as I hoped it to be, but this realization is a good reminder. And what do I mean by this? What I mean is allocating my most valuable resource to things that would benefit me, which will be good for me, such as taking the time to exercise in the morning. Never in my life would I have ever imagined myself exercising in the first week of the day, but I have been doing it for a month or so. There was a week or two that I went for 2 straight weeks every day, but because my job is quite demanding at the end of the month, I couldn't make it in the morning, but that's what I'll be working on soon. Another good allocation of my time was spending less watching TV. It was quite a good run actually. So there have been weeks that I wasn't really watching TV after work as much as I do before. But then this Depp versus Heard case was on and I just can't stop watching YouTube. And so if your zesties are up for talking about this trial, do hit me up because I can talk about it all day. But seriously, I cut down on watching TV and scrolling through social media. That's why you don't see me as often anymore in the interwebs. And I realized that if I don't do overtime at work, I can do a lot of things after work. I just got lazy at times to do those things, but there is a good amount of time if I just spend it wisely. The fourth thing is nothing is permanent in this world. Nothing lasts forever except plastic. Nah, I'm joking. So I know we all know this already, but we these types of situations remind us that change is the constant thing in this world, and because everything is impermanent, it helps us value time, our lives, other people, everything so much more. Just having that type of perspective. So I am trying my best to live one day at a time, taking it easy at times, striving as hard at times. So I'm still getting there. I haven't really mastered that type of perspective, but the good thing is I got reminded of it. And I hope you zesties are as well. The fifth thing that I learned is, of course, health is wealth. So take health checks, sleep as much as you can, eat your greens, and exercise. You know the gist. I've always prided myself on being a night owl, but I realized that I can be an early riser if I want to be. So at first, I was able to wake up with an alarm clock at 6 a.m., which is a feat, I'm telling you. But recently, I tried to wake up at 6 a.m. without an alarm, and I surprised myself that I did it. It's still a habit that needs to be cultivated though, but it's not impossible. My only issue is the nature of my work, that some of the days of the month involves staying late and such. So I needed to get around that. So hopefully soon I'm able to do a workaround on that, because health is wealth and we really need time for ourselves. So those were the top 5 things that I learned from this loss. Of course, there were a lot of some other things, but I guess those top 5 are things that we already know, but needing reminder. And these types of situations, like losing a loved one, will help us realize these types of situations. And if any of you are experiencing loss right now or feeling lonely, don't worry, because you're not alone. And many people think even that I'm okay because I look okay. I kind of feel okay. I smile, I laugh, I don't talk about it, but that doesn't mean that I'm not grieving. So people grieve and handle loss differently. Most of the time is not what you see on the surface. So if any of you zesties are feeling lonely or is currently mourning a loss of a loved one or loss of a job or anything like that, know that you're not alone. And grieving takes time. And sometimes we still grieve even though it's been a long time. So there's no deadline for it. I feel like even though time has passed, you still cry when you miss your loved one that you have lost, even if it's been so many years. So don't feel pressured about coming off of this challenge in your life. Just take one day at a time and know that there is life after this, after what you've experienced. And perhaps prioritize yourself as well. Think about yourself and think about the other possibilities. So if there's another episode I did previously about the Midnight Library. So if you're feeling down, have a read on that book, or you can check out my review of the book as well. So how about you, Zesty? How did you cope with grief and loss, and any tips that you'd like to share to us? Please do share them on our socials on Instagram or Facebook. That's at Gleeful Talkshow, or email us at gleefultalkshow@gmail.com. If you'd like to share your story on the show, slide us a DM or email us, and we'd be happy to have you in. I'd like to thank my ever supportive Zesty, Jem, who is a patron of the show. Happy Mother's Day, Jem, and to all the mothers in the world. Every day should be a Mother's Day, actually.